Hey guys, welcome back to Big Strong Book. I am Reed, and today we are discussing Philip K. Dick's novel, The Three Stigmata of Palmer Eldritch. You'll see here, try to point to it. It's one of the books here in the Library of America Collected Works edition. This book in particular is 4 novels from the 1960s. It also has The Man in the High Castle, Do Androids Dream of Electric Sheep, both of which have already been reviewed on this channel, and it has Ubik, which I will be reading next. So this book, first off, I loved it. Man, is it harder to talk about than The Man in the High Castle and Do Androids Dream of Electric Sheep. So I'll try my best to kind of give a general non-spoiler plot synopsis here, just to set the scene for what the book's about. So, Three Stigmata takes place in a futuristic 2016 where humanity has colonized pretty much every planet and moon that's possible to colonize in the solar system, or the Sol system. And there has been some contact that has been made with the nearest star system to us, which is Proxima Centauri, or that's the nearest star. I think that star system is about 4 light years away from our solar system, but it's the nearest star system to ours. So they call it the Prox, or the Proxima system, because Latin, I'm assuming Proxima, the most proximate. So we've made some contact with them, and some people have gone over to that star system. Now, Earth, or as they call Earth Terra. It is in a horrendous condition. Climate change and global warming have just eviscerated the world. Very interesting that that something like climate change and global warming was discussed as open, not necessarily as openly, not like it was a secret to be talked about, but that it was just mostly like matter-of-factly described in this book. I mean, I know more climate change movements started around the 60s, the 70s, the 80s, environmental activism, that sort of thing, when it really became and started to build into what it is today. And I mean, I know that like oil companies like ExxonMobil, they have known about the drastic effects of climate change and global warming since at least the 70s. It's just fascinating that Dick is presenting this world that has been so ravaged by it in 2016. Thankfully, our future is not like the future in here, at least not yet. But in this future, temperatures have risen dramatically, where in New York City, in the middle of the day, it gets up to 180 degrees. So in order to be safe, you have to wear these suits, these special cooling devices. Every building has these intensive air conditioning units, essentially, that are super costly and massive because they have to be. And so in order to help facilitate the progress of the human race, that's the urge to colonize, is because Earth is essentially a lost cause. Even though there are plenty of people still on Earth, it's a lost cause. And so the UN, the United Nations, they essentially run the world at this point, it seems. I could be wrong in assuming that, but what they do is they issue draft notices to men and women that essentially when they get drafted by the UN, that means they are drafted to be a colonist on a planet or a moon. So Venus, even though I think we know now that Venus can't really be inhabited by humans just because of the toxins in the surface. But they've, colonies on Venus, on Mars, on uh, Ganymede, a lot of the other Titan, and Pluto, I think, is also a colony, even though Pluto's not a planet, considered a planet anymore. Um, but so that's one of the things, and a lot of times, a lot of men and women, they try to they try to get sick, or they try to find some mental illness that they have or something like that, so they fail their physical or medical examination so they don't have to get drafted. So that's kind of where the book opens. But one of the huge things within this book is that there is a corporation called, very funny name, it's called PP Layouts, like PP Layouts. But P and P stand for Perky Pat. Now, who is Perky Pat? Well, Perky Pat is essentially this universe's equivalent of the Barbie doll. And her boyfriend is named Walt, or her version of Ken is named Walt Essex. Now, PP Layouts is a company that secretly and illegally manufactures a hallucinogenic drug called Can-D. So candy. That's the joke. PP. I'm assuming that's an intentional, funny, 12-year-old humor pun, as well as like candy. Of course it's a pun, like candy. But so there's this hallucinogenic drug, candy, which is very popular among the colonists. Now, so what the colonists do on this world, essentially, besides trying to till farmland and do all these other sorts of things, is they try to they purchase these Perky Pat dolls, and there are these little kind of like when you can get accessories for Barbie dolls or something like that, but they have like pots and pans, they've got little cars that the dolls can go around in. But so the colonists can buy all of these things, and when they put them together kind of in like a play, what we would consider like if a kid had a Barbie doll and it'd be considered like their play area, these are called their layouts. And when people ingest candy, if they're a male and taking candy, they trip into this world where they are Perky Pat's boyfriend. They are Walt. And then women who trip, they all of a sudden become Perky Pat. The extra trippy layer to all of this, in addition to becoming these doll fictional characters, is that if you have, for example, if you have two women and two men, or just more than three or more people, they all enter the same body. So, for example, if you have 3 women and 3 men who all take the drug together, and they're all like sitting around in a circle around this layout, all 3 women inhabit the same Perky Pat body, which means the 3 of them are responsible for moving one body. Likewise, the men would then all become Walt Essex. So one of the things that a couple colonists try to do is they have spouses, but they use these layouts as a means to cheat on their spouses without technically cheating. They take candy, they go into this world, and then they like have sex as Perky Pat and Walt Essex. But then what's funny is that they start to, kind of get into it, and then all of a sudden another person takes candy, and so there's all of a sudden 2 people in this body, and it's the gal's husband, and it's kind of a funny moment. He's like, I see her like this all the time. Uh, just a little funny aside. But anyway, so this drug, the company that manufactures the Perky Pat dolls and the layouts, they elite because candy is it's an illegal hallucinogenic drug that the PP layouts company, they grow on Venus, and they ship it through supply channels to the colonies. Now, when the book opens, there is a spacefaring explorer, this kind of popular, charismatic guy named Palmer Eldritch. Years prior to the start of this book, he went on a journey to the Proxima system, and all of a sudden, about 10 years later, he comes back. His ship crash lands on Pluto, and the rumor is amongst the big wigs at PP Layouts is that he has a new hallucinogenic drug that's even more powerful and addictive than candy. So that's kind of setting the scene for the plot of the book. So we open the book. The protagonist of this book, even though the title character is Palmer Eldritch, and he features quite heavily in the plot for various reasons, which I'll get into in non-spoiler and in spoilers. But the protagonist of this book is a man named Barney Meyerson, and he works for the PP Layouts company as what's called a pre-fash, essentially as a pre-fash representative or salesman. So what he does is people will make like little pots or little cars for people's layouts that they have. And he is the one who approves the pre-fash, essentially the pre-fashionable, the models that people give him. So that's his job. What is very interesting is that he's also a precog. And a precog means a precognitive, which means that he can see into the future. But he can see into kind of a multiverse. So he can see all these various threads of things that could possibly happen within the future, which makes Barney Meyerson a unique asset to his boss, Leo. God, and of course I'm blanking on this character's last name. Let me look at it here. So his name is, as I mentioned, his name is Leo. And let me just see here. Leo Bolero. And so the book opens with this woman named, and I forget her name because she's in the novel quite frequently, but not as much. Ronnie. Her name is Ronnie Fugate, or Fugate. I think it's Fugate, because she's mentioned as she's Chinese. So Ronnie Fugate, and she becomes, the book opens with her becoming Barney Meyerson's secretary or assistant. They're both precogs. And one of the things so their boss, essentially one of the heads of PP Layouts, is this man named Leo Bolero. All the characters in this novel are great. Leo and Barney, and Ronnie, they're all so good. But one of the things that Leo, at the beginning of this book, is very paranoid about is he wonders, Palmer Eldritch, he's come back with this new hallucinogen. Is he going to be, is he going to be a competitor now to candy? Is this drug? So this drug that another company starts developing, which is Palmer Eldritch's drug, is called Chew-Z. Chew-Z. Chew-Z, that's like part of their tagline. And it's a very scary, addictive, powerful, It's insane. So anyway, Leo wants to find Palmer Eldritch. He wants to kind of to neutralize him. Um, and he asks Ronnie and or he asks Ronnie first, and he says, "Where is he?" Because you can look into the future and you can like read the newspapers or the papes as they call them. You can read the papes and you can tell me where is Palmer Eldritch because it'll be announced later in a newspaper, so you can read a future newspaper in your head. Tell me where he is so I can go to where he is. And she finds out eventually that he is on Luna, or he is on the moon. He is in a facility on the moon. But she tells him something very interesting. And so Ronnie tells Leo, I see, like, essentially she sees in most of Leo's potential futures, he murders Palmer Eldritch. He is indicted for his murder. Granted, Leo isn't fully thrown off by this because he's like, well, it doesn't happen in every single one of the possible futures, and she thinks that in these futures I'm indicted. Just because I'm indicted doesn't mean I'm convicted, doesn't mean I'm going to be in prison for the rest of my life. So he's not too concerned about it. So Leo goes off to, and I'll describe this next sequence, and then I'll move on to the themes of this book before getting into spoilers. So Leo goes off to the moon. He starts to talk to who he thinks is Eldritch, but he can't see Eldritch. He can just hear him through like a speaker, and he's injected with something, and all of a sudden he trips, and he's in this weird world that's similar to the experience of Candy, but is very different. He is himself. Things in this world can be created at will. It doesn't have to. So the thing with the Perky Pat layouts is that everything within the world of the Candy hallucination is just what you physically have in the layout or in your room when you trip. But for Chu Z, nothing matters. You can take it and you can create anything within this landscape. The thing is that time passes very weirdly. So even when you come out of the trip, when you come out of the high, only a split second has passed in real time, but you might be stuck in this trip for what feels like dozens, if not hundreds of years. So hundreds of years could pass, kind of like Narnia, almost. I didn't think I'd be comparing this book to Chronicles of Lion, the Witch, and the Wardrobe, but that's what I can think of for comparison right now. Where, I mean, spoilers for Lion, the Witch, and the Wardrobe here. I'm sure everybody watching this has seen the movie or read the book. But at the end of that, the pensive children, they grow up, they live like another 15, 20 years in Narnia, and then they accidentally come back through the wardrobe, and then they find that only a split second has passed between when all four of them entered the wardrobe and when they came out again, when Diggory finds them. And so for them, they have just lived through 25 years of their life within this fantastical world, and now they're all kids again. Again, think about how depressing that must be, and that plays a significant factor. Now I'm starting to wonder if Philip K. Dick was partially inspired by Lion, the Witch, and the Wardrobe while writing this. I doubt it, but yeah, so it's depressing, assuredly, for the pensive children, and coming out of Chu Z for a lot of people can be very addictive and very depressing because they want to get back immediately. And Palmer Eldritch shows up in Leo's world, and the nature of Palmer Eldritch becomes not necessarily, I mean, it is kind of a mystery within the book, but it also starts to transform into something that is insanely terrifying. And that's the thing with this book, is that it kind of turns into almost a horror novel, a cosmological sci-fi horror in a very weird, obviously trippy, psychedelic drug enhanced way. Um, and apparently, this book, The Three Stigmata, has been called by some like essentially the best like LSD book, even though Philip K. Dick hadn't taken LSD when he wrote this. Um, and it's very fascinating. So, one of the big themes of this book is obviously it is one of the themes that I kind of tried to pull away from this is um, the drive to not only to explore through the colonies, but um, kind of dealing with the horrors of the world and both the horrors of Earth, because Earth is in a terrible state, but for the colonists, the best they can hope for, really, all that they don't look for, they hate living on Mars. They just look forward to taking these hallucinogens, which create what they know is an artificial experience, but yet they get a kick out of it. And I mean, I know that in today's world we have those artificial experiences, whether it be our phones or anything like that, where we video games, even VR, where we crave an escape. But this escape is so pervasive, and what's interesting is that within this we ultimately lose ourselves, but especially within Candide, you are not yourself. You are what is essentially you are a doll. You are Perky Pat. You are Walt. You are not yourself, which means you cannot have a fully introspective, grounding, illuminating experience through taking essentially or something like Candide. But then there's also the question that we think we have everything figured out. They think within this world they've got everything figured out, where the most mundane things are just dealing with this illegal drug that the colonists are taking. But it's almost as if one of the big questions, I think, or observations that Dick poses through this novel is that the further we probe into the universe, even just slightly outside of our own solar system, we are going to confront God or something that has capability and potential, some kind of alien force, whether it be a god, whether it be something that from our perspective is God-like. We will confront something that totally breaks down not only our sense of reality, but our sense of like cosmic scale, our sense of our importance in the universe, yeah, and our sense of who we are. And there's a little more about Shuzi, about losing yourself. And it's not like Dick he's not condemning hallucinogenic drugs here. It's just he's just it's just a thought experiment. Like, okay, we involuntarily often we place humans to be colonists in these systems. We are probing the extant resources of our solar system, and yet we have to cope somehow. And that's how humanity always is. When we are faced with trauma, when we are faced with the unknown, we have to find ways to cope with it. Sometimes we can cope with it through art or some other means. But what's available here is drugs. And it's interesting because the corporation, it's a corporation that is manufacturing these. It's a corporation who has the legal front and then the illegal front. Or the illegal, the front business and then the true business aside from it. And you have to wonder, like, what PP Layouts is doing. Is it truly, is it for the good of humanity within this world? Is it for the good of anybody? And again, there is kind of that question, that pervasive question throughout. Um, the again, it's not necessarily the morality of using these drugs, but it's just probing, like, what happens if we allow this to go so far, when it becomes so prevalent and it is a substance that is unchecked, or just so prevalent that it creates a market where a competitor can come in, like Choosy, something that is so radically different, so addicting, but promises these key marketable things for consumers. It promises them, Choosy in their marketing tactics promises the consumer eternal life. Like God, it's what I think this is the tagline: God can promise you eternal life. We deliver it. We deliver eternal life to you through our drug. Take Choosy, take our drug. So when we probe the outer parts of the space around us, and we find these ways to cope, when those ways to cope become so intertwined within our everyday life, they create a market for it. It creates more demand, and the unchecked demand then creates more products that try to up the ante, up the high, up the danger. And by upping the danger, then we really start to lose our own identity as humans. When the farther, it's like almost like the farther we go out from Earth, because the interesting thing is, humans on Earth don't take candy. They don't, I mean, Choosy is introduced within this book, but they don't take the hallucinogenic drugs. And that's just so fascinating to me. So it's almost as if Dick is saying, the further we get out from Earth, not only the more we lose ourselves, because we are not in touch with Terra, we are not in touch with Earth, but because we are placing ourselves in these horrible living environments, the further we go out, we are going to cope, and that cope, because of our, by and large, our free market world, that we are going to just introduce these terrible ways to cope that will completely erode our sense of self, and that we will confront something through this experience that we cannot comprehend, and that may spell the end of us. So that's kind of my non-spoiler, my thematic take. So I'm going to get a little bit into spoilers. I just have to say, when, oh my God, when Barney Meyerson when he goes to Mars and he joins the chicken pox prospects, or whatever his hovel is called, and it seems like, he gets met with somebody who tells him, okay, a Choosy representative is going to come. You are going to ingest Choosy. You are also going to take this, which will give you a grand mal seizure. So therefore, we can try Choosy in the courts. And he doesn't. And then there's like his code book is blank and all that. But when Barney takes Choosy, and what's interesting is that, because these seem like initially constructions that Palmer creates, Palmer at least is creating something for Barney, which is very interesting, because Barney is a broken man. Barney is divorced. He divorced his wife, I think, because of career prospects, and he's trying to get back together with his wife, even though she is already remarried. Palmer is obviously using this because he knows that Barney is vulnerable. He can try to manipulate him, but even Palmer is confused as to why Barney keeps going back to the scenes with his wife, and to try to find her in the land of Choosy. And a lot of me starts to think that Barney is a stand-in for Philip K. Dick, because the thing about Barney falling in love with Anne, I believe Anne is the name of one of Dick's wives. the dark-haired girl. I know that that's a recurring motif throughout his novels. Um, and um, and the fact that he is divorced and he's trying to reconcile that. I think Dick, by this point, this novel came out, I think, 1964. Crazy all that a novel this vibrant and just so alive. I mean, not to say that literature past a certain point is not alive, but it's just, this feels like it was written yesterday. It truly does. Not almost 60 years ago, which is crazy. But I think Dick, by that time, had already been divorced a few times. And, it's just, those scenes with Barney were so haunting. And then when you realize that, like, that Palmer has tried to mold his sense of self so completely, and then almost tries to trade bodies with like Palmer Eldritch and Barney almost swap bodies, and that's how their identity starts to shake out, and Barney feels himself in Palmer's body, and it's so like the transformation, the whatever you want to call it, just that image of when he wakes up in Palmer's ship and he realizes that he's Palmer Eldritch, but he's really Barney Meyerson, but he has this body, but then he wakes up in that future moment, and then he wakes up in the present, and he wakes up in the present, and he's able to split himself from Palmer Eldritch, and it refuses to take Choosy again. But then everybody kind of they start to appear as Palmer Eldritch. The three stigmata being his artificial hand, his like fake, his replacement eyes, and his jaw or jawline or something like that. Those are the three stigmata. Obviously, stigmata, the kind of the signs, like holes in the hands, the wrists, and the feet, almost like the wounds of Jesus. That's an interesting thing too, is the religious themes in this, which really become prevalent towards the end, with how again, it's just the sense of time is so corrupted that the idea of Palmer Eldritch appearing in pretty much everybody's trips and highs when they're on Choosy, and for the other people in Barney's hovel, they don't really fully comprehend, I guess, that it's Palmer Eldritch. But they feel this dark presence in there with them, and they start to freak out a little. And when Barney and Anne have the conversation at the end about, is Palmer Eldritch God? Have we found God who has like almost lost touch with humanity, and so is now trying to get back in and get back to being a part of humanity again? And what they kind of assume at the end is like, and Anne almost says, well, just because he has these capabilities doesn't mean he's God. Like, we shouldn't just jump straight to, oh, he can do this, therefore he is God. What if when he was in the prox system, what if through the components of Choosy, what if a godlike creature kind of took over the form of Palmer Eldritch, and it is trying to live in every single human life as Choosy spreads. And then at the end, when Leo is making his way back to Earth, and Leo is convinced that he can kill Palmer, he might even be convinced that he doesn't have to. But then even Leo wonders at the end, is he still tripping, because he starts to appear like Palmer Eldritch. Felix, the guy who he's with, also starts to appear like Palmer Eldritch. He begins to wonder, is, is, am I still tripping? Is this still a dream almost? And I've seen some comparisons of this book to Inception, kind of with that ambiguous ending. I mean, I don't think it's like with Inception. I don't think it's still a dream or a trip at the end. I think it is reality. It's just that Palmer Eldritch now has kind of, because they have all taken this drug, and they can all see Palmer Eldritch within each other. Like this drug has almost physiologically changed these people and how they view others, which is interesting. And in reading this book too, I also got the impression almost of Palmer Eldritch as, I couldn't help but compare him in my mind to Agent Smith in The Matrix. Agent Smith, who by the second movie, by the third movie, is trying to just take over everything, take over everybody, and Palmer Eldritch is kind of like that too. So that was kind of something that I had thought of a little bit. I think those are all the major spoiler thoughts that I had. Again, this novel, in this book, it's only 200 pages, but my God, is it just such imaginative writing. It is just so good. It has my highest recommendation. This book, I think, it's better, just in the way that it's written, just in the energy of the scenes. It's such a living novel, which is fitting for its themes and its content. I think it is better than Do Androids Dream of Electric Sheep. So this one also for me gets a perfect 5 out of 5. So yeah, I think I'll kind of leave it with that. So yeah, if you have read The Three Stigmata of Palmer Eldritch, let me know what you think. Leave a like, subscribe, and I will see you guys next time.